everybody.
Hey, everyone.
Well, is everyone?
Go lay down.
Woof.
Well, he hears people talk. He thinks someone's here, so he goes into protective mode. And,
Good dog. Good
yeah.
doggy.
Yeah, but he barks too much.
Long day for you, Judy, huh? And Keaton.
Yep.
Poor
Since
thing.
I was here. I think I was here at 7 this morning. So yeah,
Oh,
it's been long.
I'm sorry. I gotta set up a cot for you.
That's all right. No, that I'm not doing.
Yeah, Judy's day was definitely longer.
So Ben may or may not be here.
Yeah, he
we
didn't
could-
think he would.
Yeah, Pete's not joining us. Jane is not joining us. So we'll just give Cheryl and Marissa a couple more minutes.
We need Ben.
Yeah, well, he said he wasn't sure if his wife had to work tonight or not or something.
Right. But he's most knowledgeable about this stuff.
Yes. Yeah, he sure is.
Yeah.
Well, we'll muddle through the best we can. But I'm hoping Cheryl joins as well. So 'cause she's pretty helpful too. Is everybody okay with getting the documents from the Dropbox? And
I had no problems, Wendy.
okay, good. I just want to make sure.
I had no problems.
Neither did I.
Yep, here too.
Well, I'm hoping Cheryl pops in. And everybody knew about the meeting and they were all asked to advise us if they couldn't make it. So 1 minute and then we're going to get started.
Okay.
And then Pete sent me some additional comments. And then Jane sent some additional comments. And then I also had, I find them, Jane's original comments. Okay.
Well, here's Cheryl now.
Oh, okay, good. Perfect. Yes.
Yeah, Wendy, I'll let you do the sharing.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
So, yeah, I'll let you kind of run it.
Okay. Keaton and I are going to be having a meeting next week, a Zoom meeting with Ellen Cost and Jeff Szymanski from the town of Amherst, because they're doing their LWRP right now also. And so we have been talking about collaborating with them, consulting with them to find out where there may be opportunities for the town and the village to do stuff together. And Ellen indicated to us that there's a couple projects they have in mind, so they're looking forward to talking to us. So we're going to do a Zoom meeting with them next Tuesday, is it?
Yes, yep.
Yeah, next Tuesday. So that's good. Because there were the two things I had in mind that I want to talk to them about. One of them, of course, is Glen Park and ways that we can make better connections or improved connections with Amherst State Park. And then also addressing the low water levels in the Len Springs area, because that's town village boundary right there. So, and then we need to talk to them about the flooding and erosion issues with the creek. So we'll go over that too. So I just wanted everybody to know that we'll be doing that next week, and I'll let the committee know how that goes and what we talked about and what we decided on. So I'm gonna share screen and where are the doc? Wait. I don't want to share that. What is that? Don't know what that is. I have documents open, but I'm not seeing them. Let's go files. Nope. Why can't I find my files?
So when I clicked on the
Well, let
link
me
just
let's
now,
see if I can.
it said the item was deleted.
What's that?
When I clicked on the link that you gave us just now, it said the item was deleted.
What link?
The Dropbox link that you gave us in the email the other day.
Okay, but I had
It's an updated one.
But
and
I
they
have-
work.
show all windows. Well, that's not it. I don't want to show that window. No, and I don't want my iPhone. And I don't want that. I don't understand. I've got them both open in Word on my computer, and it's not bringing up any of my Word documents. So, so Keaton, can you find, wait. Suddenly, here we go.
Okay, good.
5, where's 4? Here we are. I guess it was just being stubborn.
Okay.
All right, can you all see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Good.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so we'll just take a stroll through, get everybody out of the way. We'll just take a stroll through what we did. Plus, it seems that Pete had another comment about, Pete went backwards and he looked at the old projects and he gave me comments on the old projects in addition to what he gave me last time. So he came back and said the proposed enhanced trail from Glen Avenue to the bridge in Amherst State Park is almost totally in Amherst State Park, which is the jurisdiction of the town. There will be pathways in Glen Park that lead to the Creekside Path and provide access from the parking lot in Glen Park to the Creekside as there are now. And I have all faith that Ben will deal appropriately with them when those issues come forth. Not sure what he's talking about, but therefore it is appropriate that this project be passed to the town of Amherst and their planning department. It is not a Williamsville project. Well, we were talking about the part of the trail that's actually in the village of Williamsville, right below Glen Park on the north side of Glen Avenue. So I don't agree with him. And this is, so I think that what we were talking about in terms of just trying to enhance that pathway should still stand. So how does everyone else feel?
I
Well,
agree
what-
with what you just said.
Yeah, I do too, except that's not the area that gets flooded, right?
It does occasionally flood, I'm sure.
So
It's all
just,
flood.
I just want to make note of that. So whatever, however you enhance it,
Well, that's why we said that we have to use appropriate materials,
okay,
and we have to be aware that, if we did put in boardwalks or wooden crossings or things like that, they may not hold up. See, as this area is subject to flooding during spring snow melt and runoff and after significant rain events,
okay,
no permanent structures or paving is recommended.
correct.
Improvement of the creek bank near Glen Avenue is also required to create a more formalized. So yeah, we
Yes.
talked about the installation of stone or,
Right.
similar material that may not wash away as readily.
Okay,
So,
that's good. Just want
yeah.
to make sure. Yep.
So here I'll just pull out some more information from the Amherst State Park plan, master plan, and add that there. Okay, we took out project 2 because we agreed after looking at the state park master plan that this was not feasible or recommended. So that's gone. Then we went over this in terms of better activating Glen Park, and Pete had a comment on that. And he said, from its beginning in 1977, Glen Park has been designated as passive park. Picnic tables, fire pits, permanently installed barbecue grills, and organized sports have been prohibited. We are now wrestling with the rules for the newly opened up Knoll Nature Center Pavilion in light of requests for restrictive or semi-restrictive reservations of use of the facility. In general, organized activities such as sports or social gatherings that would block out a segment of the park have been dissuaded since its inception in 1977. So that must be something that the Glen Park Joint Board is dealing with. So he's going to have to advise us on that. I mean, what we really said here was it should just be enhanced for its use. And the biggest thing that was needed were restrooms.
Right.
So whether they start letting people use the pavilion or not, I don't think that changes.
Well, what he's talking about is we're adding the pavilion on as rentals.
Yes,
Yes, and that's what he's actually talking about, I'm quite sure, because once you rent it out, sometimes
Yeah.
it can become a whole different thing. But we'll have restrictions as well, like any other rental we have within the village.
mhm.
So
All
he's
right,
just being cautious.
right. But I think that from what he said, I sense that the decision hasn't been made yet, but they're struggling with it, whether they should do it or not. So
No, it has been made. It's already up as a rental.
it is. Okay.
Oh, yes, it is
Well,
on our village website. You
Okay.
can rent out the pavilion.
Okay.
Has that new pavilion been decked out with picnic tables yet? I haven't been down there recently.
Yes, there are 3 picnic tables.
Got it.
Are they in the pavilion or out on the?
They're
Yes.
in the pavilion, and we have some benches around the pavilion, but there are 3 picnic tables in the pavilion with lighting,
Okay.
Very good.
but no bathrooms.
I
Right.
think bathrooms have always been the issue.
Yeah, it's
The big issue down there.
right.
Yep. Okay. All right. And then we took out the next one, and let's see, he did say that he felt that that canoe launches are needed. I mean, we agreed that people, they find their way in. They don't need a formalized launch site. and as we talked
Mhm.
about last time.
Right.
And so he said add, and south of Island Park, paddling along Ellicott Creek from Island Park up to the rapids near the Whirly Bridge is quite active. There is a town park at the west end of Northland Springs Drive that could be developed by the town. So that's something that we should talk to them about.
Mhm.
Keaton? Okay.
I can tell you in the, and you have pictures of it here in the parks, the Village Parks group, we had shown a rendering of a canoe launch.
Yes, yes. And
In
that's
that.
actually, that's one of the projects coming up. We will talk about that in a little while.
Okay, so what you just said is you weren't saying delete that.
No, no, absolutely
Okay.
not. No, what Pete is saying that we definitely need, or the village definitely needs canoe launches. And
Okay.
he feels that they should put one in Amherst State Park, and they should put one in, as he noted here, in that little park at Northland Springs. And then, of course, the one that's proposed for Island Park. And he said, yeah, so we're all right. So, but
Sounds good.
I think the way this had been written, I still think it's okay to keep it out, because we're not really proposing a formalized site. The canoe, the paddle sport folks park in the parking lot, carry their vessel down, and off they go. So,
Agreed.
Okay. And then we took out 5 after discussion with Ben. And Pete said the West Pond and the bioswales transporting water down to the main ponds will be remediated this spring. Ben has good ideas with the Glen Park Joint Board endorsing them. So we already had talked about that. So now he still has problems. Remember we talked about this, strengthening that physical connection between Glen Park and Island Park, and Pete's original comment was that he felt that there should be that a lot of people are crossing from the entrance into Glen Park across the street, and we sort of figured that that's people that are going to the brewery or the Irish Tavern and parking there and just walking across the street. And
Right.
so we all agreed that as this was written, it should stay. But he said the hawk signal is of little use for foot traffic crossing Main Street from one park to the other. There is much more foot traffic crossing from the doctor's parking lot and the entrance to Glen Park to the 3 restaurants on the south side. Signage is going to be of marginal effect in changing that due to the paucity of parking in that area.
Well,
So
we would never put another crosswalk there. It's absurd.
well, that would be a stupid location for a crosswalk.
Yeah, it just would never happen.
It's
and
too
people-
close to the
no.
traffic signal, right?
It would,
Right.
So,
I mean, I don't even think that the county would allow you to do it because it would
No.
mess up traffic so much.
No,
Yeah, and it's not the county, it's the
It's the
state.
state.
And as a
State,
member of
yeah,
the
sorry.
Traffic and
Okay,
Safety
I will
Board,
figure
we
this
see
out.
this all the time.
Yeah.
As Eileen just said, it's impossible, cannot even be considered.
I
Right.
can tell you that when we drew this in the Parks Committee, this number 6, we talked a lot about that crossing, and we said exactly what you were saying, that, it's not like we can put another crossing in. And the reality is that, people are going to have to learn how to
Yes.
use the hawk light. And hopefully people with bikes or people that aren't going to the bar will use, sort of the designated path in the hawk light.
Yes, yep. Yeah, he said, actually I read, here's his new comment on it. He said, a more thorough analysis of the reality of the situation. Foot traffic from one park to the other park is not going to go west to get east in any great abundance. It will take the shortest, most direct route, which is not over by the hawk signal. We have too many signs on our roads already, from which I note as an example of this point. In the short distance of Glen Avenue to Mill Street, to Rock Street, there are 27 directive signs. An abundance of such a short point of travel. I do not favor signage clutter. Well, I don't think any of us do. But, but I still, this project as a whole, you know, if you look at the graphic, I would still recommend that it stay here. I understand his concerns, but
So I think that there's a way, I mean, thinking about it, so there are signs that are for pedestrians and there are signs that are for traffic, right? And you know, certainly you could point to where parking is and that sort of thing for people who are, you know, trying to park. But when I was imagining this sort of signage and this sort of thing, I was thinking about, you know, once people were pedestrians in the area, you know, and walking, you know, that the signs would be focused on, you know, that sort of viewpoint.
right. Well, I mean, you'd have signage here.
So I don't think that there's clutter issue here from
No,
that perspective.
No, I mean, I think you'd probably have a sign here that would, maybe something, use hawk signal to reach Glen Park or something. And then you might have another sign on the other side with just an arrow, Glen Park this way. And anybody who's walking down the street, they'll find it because it's got a big entry sign. So I don't think that we're talking about a great amount of signage anyway. To do that. So, but this project is really not so much, I mean, it is about getting people from here, through here, across here, and then this way. But this is a big piece of it, and it's very important. So I don't want to lose sight of that.
And I would add the number 1 that's marked on there, sort of the gateway. The
Yes.
concept was, you know, as you go into Glen Park off Main Street, you have that nice archway.
Yep.
Sort of coming up with a similar archway that sort of connects the two.
Yeah, and it would
visually.
be in this vicinity, right? Oh, no, right here.
Actually,
Okay.
yeah, right out there. The key
Yeah.
was to pull it out to Main Street so that Highland Park was not like in the backyard.
Sure, yes. Yeah, because it is kind of lost back here if
Right.
you're not familiar with the community. Yeah.
Right. So we were trying to create sort of a, you know, call it a greenway, although it's not much of a greenway, but it, you know, trying to point people there through an
Sure.
attractive entrance.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, well, I think enough said. All right, 7 we were fine with, 8 we were fine with, and here's your canoe launch, kayak related storage, kayak storage racks. This was the non-motorized boating. So there's the canoe launch. And then number 9, we talked a lot about this. And the yellow is what was added based on our conversation about restoring this pond system. And this is number 9. Ben's comment was, he said, leave this item in the hands of Ben. Unless this item can bring him funding to get the job done. Well, it's possible. So,
I would let Ben weigh in on whether he wants it left to him.
right. So, all right. So I think we're good here. And then project 10, we talked a lot about this, the establishing this pollinator insect corridor. And the yellow is what was added based on our discussion. And let's see, Jane had a comment. She said, I'm highly supportive of this section. As I mentioned early on in the process, it is a key environmental initiative as municipalities continue to lose green space and support systems for pollinators and birds from continuous development and conversion of permeable to non-permeable surfaces. My question is, why not extend the pollinator garden initiative beyond Island and Glen Park and also coordinate with Amherst? So there's another opportunity there for our discussion on Tuesday. So coordinate with Amherst to include continuing the corridor through Amherst State Park, particularly in light of the fact that we are recommending more defined pathways along the waterfront for this location. Yeah, I think that's fine. And
I mean, I'm a little bit, so if I were a reviewer looking at a grant like this, right, I would wonder, okay, what do they exactly mean from the perspective of, I mean, you certainly could do quite a bit to up the, because of the invasive pressure in Amherst State Park,
Yeah.
to, you know, up the wildflowers. However, there are quite a few,
Yes.
particularly once you get into the wet meadow area. You know, they've got a lot of Joe Pine there. They've got some naturally occurring, some boneset and stuff.
They
They've got some
might,
naturally occurring stuff, right? So
yeah.
what does that mean to continue that corridor? Maybe we don't have to put that in here, but I just would want to kind of think about what that actually means.
Yeah, I agree with you, Cheryl, because it
Yeah.
really doesn't make much sense, because the
No.
corridor that would be along the water, and you really can't you can't plant any flowers there. Sorry.
Well, but that's
Impossible.
fine, because I mean, they have flowering dogwoods down there.
Yep.
Right, it's all
They have
existing
trees,
already.
They have, so I mean, it's what people think about pollinator stuff. I mean, they're not
Right.
zinnias, right? But that's okay, because that's not what we want.
And they're perfect as it is, right? I
Yeah.
agree.
Well, not only
Yes.
that, but there must be enough stuff, because that
There's a
area,
lot.
as
Beautiful.
noted in the Amherst State Park Master Plan, is just a magnet for migrating birds. So there's
Yes.
got to be stuff there that's attracting them, whether
Well,
it's,
so what's attracting, I mean, the thing is the birds, I mean, yes, they're attracted by that, but they also have so on the trees, right? The shrubs and the trees are really what's supporting the insect life. And the
Mhm,
insect life is what the birds need to eat
mhm.
to raise their young, right? I mean, to feed their young, right? So, I mean, that's what's in it, you know, you have some good trees there that are supporting, and shrubs that are supporting the insect lives. The perennials don't do that. People keep thinking about these pollinator gardens as being you know, like I said, zinnias, right? And that's just not, that's not really what is needed, right? This is a wild space. We could definitely up, you know, there are floodplain species that could survive there. We could definitely up, you know, taking out the, you know, buckthorns and knotweeds and all that, right? And there's certainly things that could be done that would make it a better environment, but I don't think it necessarily fits into this sort of thing.
Right.
Right, I agree.
Okay. All right. So if one of you sees Jane, maybe you could
I'll tell her.
have
She's
that
on
discussion with
my
you. Yeah,
environmental
you know,
committee. Yep,
okay.
no problem.
Okay, all right. All right. So the next one, we had this discussion about invasives, and we revised the language to reflect what we talked about. So we were good there. So this is where we stopped. And this was to remediate and prevent shoreline erosion along Ellicott Creek. And so that the creek is experiencing seasonal surges and subsequent shoreline erosion. Using nature-based solutions, shorelines can be remediated to limit the negative impacts of shoreline erosion on water quality. This includes reinforcing the shoreline with vegetation and creating a natural, resilient, and self-repairing riparian area. The healthy shoreline encompasses the full expanse of the land-water interface, in-water, shoreline, and upland. This kind of functioning ecosystem will reduce shoreline erosion by absorbing and lessening erosive forces. Additionally, it provides benefits of improved water quality by stormwater runoff, habitat that supports the life cycles of many species, and enhanced public access. So is everybody good with that? Actually, this picture doesn't belong here.
No.
These pictures should be swapped, yeah.
That looks
Yeah.
funny. I know.
Yeah, this picture should be up there, and this picture should be down here. So I'll fix that.
Okay.
Okay. Lauren, if I recall, Lauren, is this one of the ones that you enhanced for me?
Yeah, a little bit. So, I mean, I pulled the language mostly from our Living Shorelines program, because we have a few examples around the region of, you know, successful living shorelines. So I don't know if it would be helpful to like cite examples from other places in something like this, but that explanation of, you know, what a living shoreline can accomplish is perfect.
Right.
That's
Okay.
good. Mhm. It's very good.
Okay, good. All right, now, anybody want to venture a guess?
It
How
can,
much?
it's so variable. It's very site specific, because it depends too on if any regrading of like the the slope of the like shoreline is required, which on
Yeah.
Ellicott Creek, I don't think that would be the case, but
Yeah.
I mean, I can,
Could you give me a range? I mean, could it be, say, 100,000 to 500,000 or 50,000 to 150,000? I have no,
yeah, I can't give you a range right now, but I can talk to someone tomorrow who can estimate that well for me and send you a message.
So it makes it easier for you. So did we put in the linear footage in here?
no.
Because I know that I looked at, that I roughly measured that out last time. I can do it again, but I mean, just because you may need to know, kind of.
Yeah.
I seem to recall it being about 5,000, but I'm not positive on that.
So
And then also, like, would this be, so we have invasive removal in a different section, right?
Yeah, we
So on
talked
the
about
living-
invasives up here under 11.
So it may be helpful just to specify whether or not we're talking in the invasive removal. So I don't think that there's going to need to be regrading. There's going to need to be a lot of, obviously planting and then maintenance. We would want to make sure that we put in some maintenance cost in there for the ballpark estimate.
Yeah.
so
I'd also add in here that a lot of that depends on how you handle the water levels, when it comes down to the dam, which I know
Yes.
was in here after
Well,
this.
this is
but
downstream, right?
Is this all downstream, not upstream?
No, it's all, I mean, I think the areas that we're talking about are along the eastern
the
shoreline
upstream
of Island
sections.
Park and the
Right.
opposite shoreline. It's-
Oh, okay, those ones. Oh, that's right,
Yeah.
that's right.
So-
Yeah.
We did look
So
at
from
that.
that perspective, the way the dam is managed today, in my opinion, creates a lot of the damage
Yeah.
that occurs on the shoreline.
Can
If that
actually,
was stabilized, I think you have a lot less damage that occurs.
I mean, I think that brings up a really, interesting point or possibly an interesting, project. I don't know if we incorporate it into here. But that's, actually
Yeah,
an
it's coming up.
investigation of how to manage a living shoreline, given, the dam, because we're not going to get, I mean, stabilizing it will certainly help, but we're not going to get rid of, given the parameters, right? I
Yeah.
think we decided we were not going to get rid of the dam. So
Well, we don't know, and that's.
We haven't
there's a
discussed that.
possibility, right? But
Yeah.
if that's there, I think that getting some funding to actually not just create a living shoreline based on what's done in other places, I think we got to be a little bit creative here. And I guess, these are things that I'm experimenting with, different approaches, but having something that's tailored, to the section. So that's
Right.
kind of a research sort of thing. I think would be good.
Because, and you're right, I mean, before this can be decided on, the decision and the study has to be undertaken to determine, should the dam be rebuilt in its current location? Should the dam be, taken out, and should some other means of flood control be installed, perhaps just upstream of Island Park? I mean, we talked about this at a previous meeting. So I think whatever happens here under Project 12 is definitely going to be dependent
Depending on the dam.
on
The dam.
how the village, yes,
Mhm.
deals with the dam.
So
And
does
so if
it
the
make
dam-
sense to
if-
put a comment in here referring to the dam project? Because I
Yes.
don't think you can do 12 until you solve the dam
Yes.
solution.
Right. Good point.
Yep,
You've got miles of shoreline that are affected by the dam and dam
Yes.
operations.
and you're right. And if the dam goes back in where it is, and all they do is put in a new dam with nice new working floodgates, the problem is going to remain. You're going to have, these rising water levels, then you're going to pull the gates out, and the water's going to come flying through. And
Right.
so
Not good.
nothing will change. So, but
Although if we're dealing with a temporary, so if we're dealing with like waiting until there's a new dam, right?
yes,
There's potential for damage in the meantime.
right.
Now, how severe that damage is,
Anybody's
really
guess.
depends on your feedback, right? But, or your perspective of what you're trying to do with that shoreline
Well,
itself. But we
yes.
do have several really unhealthy shorelines developing on the residential sections. And then we have some, and then along the island park on that edge, that they are losing land, but it's also becoming a pretty unhealthy shoreline. And if it's going to take, it's going to take years to get in a new dam, we may have to have a temporary solution. Something that, we may need to work on it with something that's going to kind of help those shorelines. And you can do a living shoreline approach that's not a permanent, may not be a permanent solution, or deals with what we have now, and then thinking that it can be modified or tweaked when, we have the final design.
Right. But I guess,
Are these projects ranked in importance in any way?
no, we have not,
No.
we have not ranked them. And I don't think we necessarily have to do that right now. I mean, after the LWRP is adopted, and then the village starts to implement the program, that's when, whether it's this committee or some other committee in the village, somebody's got to sit down and go through these and say, all right, and that has to be done in concert with the village board. What do we want to work on this year? And some will be low hanging fruit and easier to do than others. And so you want to work on short-term projects as well as longer-term projects, but decisions have to be made in terms of prioritizing. And some of these projects are also going to be ongoing. They're going to be projects that are going to be applicable every year. I mean, invasives, every year you're going to start targeting specific areas to work on removal and replanting, and that's an ongoing thing. So, once you start implementing this program and you have a committee set up, those are the discussions that have to be had. But I don't.
The reason I asked.
I don't even think we could do it right now. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
The reason I asked is, potentially part of a phase, call it a phase one, could be a study on how we should be managing the dam without changing it. Right, there's procedures that, quite honestly, I've never seen a written procedure of how the dam goes up and down to protect the environment. It's typically up and down based on who's free when, and they yank them or put them in the gates.
Yeah.
Part of it is a huge project to say replace it or change it or evolve it into something different, different water management system, but until those funds are available, potentially there's a step one, which says, should we get an environmentally friendly handbook of how to manage the dam gates to create the least amount of damage upstream? So just a thought. Because I think we
it's a
had
very good
determined that
thought,
we don't have
frankly.
any obligation to have the
Yeah.
dam. So why
Yeah.
not manage it to protect the shoreline?
Yeah, no, and I think that's a very good thought, and I think that should be added to, the dam is Project 19, and
Yeah.
So,
what you're
so
saying.
your thought that this is kind of a research approach, or?
I think it is.
Okay,
uh, Simply because, again, I in the years that I've watched it and seen it, I've never gotten the feeling that we ever had anything other than a gut feel for what has to happen up, down,
Mhm.
all around with those gates. And I
Yeah.
can tell you, looking at maps over the years, that, we've lost 10 or 15 feet of the island over, the last 50 years. And, since we don't, I haven't heard that we have an obligation to have that dam or maintain the dam. Maybe we should.
We
be
do.
managing-
Well, the village is trying to, we do have an obligation, but at this point, we try to understand why the obligation lies with the village, honestly. It's a huge cost. I mean, Keaton, are you there, Keaton? Remember
I
we
am,
had
yes.
these discussions with the dam?
Yep.
It'd be wonderful if Erie County took it over, so it wouldn't be our problem. But it's I mean, it needs to be replaced. It's in really poor shape right now.
Yeah, I believe the dam project overall should be, part of our list of projects. We need it in there. If there's any
And
legalese that,
Keaton,
yeah,
that should be discussed with the town of Amherst as well.
right. That could be, that's actually something that when Wendy and I meet with town representatives on Tuesday, we can mention that, some shared service project of the dam. So, but yeah,
Definitely.
that needs to be in there. And
Can I ask a quick
Crazy.
question? Just, and I apologize, it's been a couple of
Right.
meetings since I've been around, but is the obligation in relation to the water level and the water going into those other properties, or is it with respect to stormwater management?
The latter, stormwater management.
Okay.
So,
And that's
the,
something new to me. So
yeah, the legal ruling doesn't necessarily state specifics. It's a ruling from 46, which basically just states that we need to control the dam during times of heavy flooding or potential heavy flooding.
Right.
And
that's the other piece that has to be woven into this.
right.
We still don't know
Exactly.
the resolution of that whole lawsuit.
Right.
And that lawsuit that, the Supreme Court found for the plaintiffs, basically saying the village has got to start complying with the rules that were set forth for operating that dam.
Right.
I mean, right down to the volume of water that's supposed to be flowing out of it, and when the gates go in and when they shouldn't be in, and all of that. So, so that all has to, it's all part and parcel. But
Yeah.
and
Could be
I don't
that.
know how, I don't know how you get another entity to take over the dam. And I'm not, I mean, so it was originally installed for stormwater management or for flooding?
No, back in the day for flooding.
And for the mill, right? I mean, it had
And
a function.
they rearranged it. Part of it, around the island, they created, and that's what made this whole thing a mess. Because this
Yes.
wasn't, that's where it all started. And yes, for the mill as well. But it just wasn't engineered properly, in my opinion, period.
Right, because they took an old raceway that, because the creek always went around the west side of the island. That was
That's
the
correct.
creek's original path. And
And
then
that's right.
when they
which
constructed
gave the mills
mills,
their water, other than the
yeah,
race.
when they constructed mills on the east side of the creek by the falls, they constructed that raceway that took water to those mills. And then
Right.
that raceway is what got widened out and dredged out, and they created the new channel for the creek and put in the dam. But I've never been able to find anything that actually said why they did that.
My understanding, and again, I have no documentation of this, but my understanding was it was about flood control. And certainly it was a works project. And I know we had
It was,
discussed.
I'm sorry,
whose
a what project?
responsibility was a public works project from
Oh,
the
yeah.
Depression.
Yeah,
But I had not heard that we were required to maintain it. But what I just a thought there on that is if the federal government in essence built it and then put it on us and we don't have the money to replace it, it'd be interesting to see who's gonna take us to task if we don't rebuild it.
Mhm.
Because really that's a Army Corps project, in my opinion. That's
I agree,
not a village
totally.
project by any
Army
stretch.
Corps of Engineers.
But without the dam, if you just said, we don't want this dam anymore, we never, forget it, we're taking it out. If that happens, then you have no way to guarantee water for the west side of the island.
Right. So from that perspective, if I were running the village or making a recommendation, it would be, what is the most cost-effective way to create or maintain the island on a 24/7 basis, 365 days a year, and leave it at that. And that's really just a bunch of concrete berms, right? Weirs and such. But anyway, that's just needs to be studied. But I think at the very least, at an initial sense, I mean, there is a way to manage that dam properly to protect the shoreline. That's all I was really saying.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So we're basically talking about Project 19 right now. Because that's what we're really talking about here was, the dam's located just south of where the west branch of the creek joins the main branch, constructed in 1930, and the fact that it's deteriorating, difficult to manipulate, can become, the gates can become inoperable when they freeze in the winter. And we just said the project involves the reconstruction or replacement of the dam. Prior to designing a new dam structure, a hydrologic study should be undertaken to determine the best means for controlling creek levels and upstream flooding along the creek. This study should evaluate the dam reconstruction in the current location to see if it's warranted or if similar or other type of water control structure further upstream at Allen Park could properly address existing problems and ensure sufficient water flow around the island throughout the year. The potential for public access by way of the dam should also be examined. But yeah, we have to add here that any study has to consider, an operation and maintenance plan. It can't just be, well, it's October and I have staff available, so go stick the gates in. And also we have to comply with the lawsuit, with the requirements, and that probably should be mentioned as well.
Who filed the lawsuit? Is there an active lawsuit?
No, I meant
Yeah.
the court case, not the lawsuit.
okay.
But the, yeah. Okay. Yep. So, but I want to reference here. Cross-reference with Project 12. All right. I haven't a clue what this would cost, but I think doing a study of this nature would be very expensive.
Very.
Because it's really, I mean, it has to be all encompassing. They've got to look at the history of it. They've got to look at the history of the dam itself, all the stuff we were just talking about, why it went in, what it does, what's going on in the creek. And part of this, I told you that I had been speaking with Ted Meyer from the DEC because he was keeping me up to date on that. The Army Corps has a consultant doing those flood studies for portions of Ellicott Creek, and they were doing different sections. And they did the section that went from Stony Road in Lancaster to Len Springs. And we need the next piece done. We need them to study from Len Springs to the dam and beyond. And
Right.
so
Do they have the cost for that? Because that should be public knowledge, right?
I have no idea what that costs,
So as long as we know what it is, I mean, that should be published. What was paid for that? Or often it is if it was a contract.
Yeah. But that, and that's another, I mean, so they would definitely be a partner in this, as they are listed. So, All right, well, I'll add some language here. So let's go back. So back on project 12, Lauren, you'll work on getting an estimate, and I'm gonna cross-reference here. Project 19. Okay. So anything else you want to say before we leave 12 and move on? Okay. 13 is prohibiting the disposal of yard waste into the Ellicott Creek corridor. And it's really, this is really more of an educational thing. The proper management of private landowners with creekside properties, critical to maintaining a healthy waterway. We don't want them dumping their yard waste into the creek. And the best way to deal with that is, I think, through a public education campaign. I don't know how else you do
Example
it.
here of what yard?
I'm sorry?
Because you have a picture of like gardening waste.
Well, couldn't you picture somebody just taking this and dumping it on the shoreline?
I hope not.
I don't think that
I
that's.
would hope not, but unfortunately, I think some people.
That's
do.
horrible.
I don't think a lot of people, I mean, so what we typically see is that we see things, so upstream, and a lot of this is from actually Lynn Springs area, but we see debris that's not appropriately cleaned up. So for instance, trees coming downstream.
Mhm. So
Now,
let
I
me
don't know
ask
how
you
much of
this.
this issue this is. I see this as more mainly like the things that I worry about more, and then like entire sheds and things coming down.
So is this even a project? Should I just take it out?
Well, so I see it as runoff, right? Dealing
Well,
with.
that's addressed in other projects.
Yeah.
That's a
okay.
different one, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't, this
So
is odd.
I can't see a whole lot there. I mean, I would love it if people would tell people, stop putting your sheds on there so I don't have to pay for it to be removed from my bridge. But
That's
my
yeah,
own problem.
People putting grass clippings in the creek and people putting up a shed are two different, completely different things.
Well, I
So,
know, but the sheds wash off and wash out
Yeah.
and floods, but I don't see a lot of debris running down. I mean, I'm down by the creek a lot. I don't see a lot of debris running down.
Well, then if none of you have opposition, I'm going to take this project out.
That's a
and
good
it-
idea.
That's a good idea.
The whole, I mean, it can be mentioned as part of another project. So, all right. The next one was strengthening prohibitions on feeding of wildlife in public parks.
Mhm.
Is this, I mean, I know you have signs up. Here's one of them in Glen Park. Is this a good project that should stand?
Well,
And I
it's
want
the-
to go
I
back and
think-
mention, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, the signage that is there presently is sufficient. And I've noticed people have actually stopped feeding the ducks, and there are less ducks than there have ever been because there's no food. So
Oh,
I don't
that's
think
very good.
Yeah, I don't think we need to add more signage.
All right, so do we need this project?
I don't think so. I think we're good.
I don't think so, yeah.
I
All right.
don't think so.
And I just as a disclaimer, this whole project list was just a list that was assembled from feedback we got through the public meetings, from committee discussions. So it's not, I mean, I'm not surprised that some of these will fall out like this, that
Yeah.
they aren't
That works.
realistic. Yeah, okay.
No, we're good. Mhm.
This one is realistic. And this is about implementing improvements to address stormwater inflow and infiltration. This is an ongoing project and problem that the village is dealing with. And the village very much wants to consolidate its wastewater, sanitary sewer system with the town of Amherst. They want the town to take over the sanitary sewer system. It can't be done until the village addresses stormwater inflow and infiltration, which is putting added pressure on the wastewater treatment plant. So that's what this project is about. That large portions of the stormwater management infrastructure are old, they're inadequate, You have several areas that are in need of inflow and infiltration remediation to mitigate sanitary sewer overflow problems. So sewer effluent finds its way into stormwater runoff through leaking sewer laterals, also through manhole covers. Contaminated runoff finds its way into the storm collection systems through catch basins, manhole covers, and overland flow. These problems result in untreated sewage being conveyed to Ellicott Creek. The creek is identified as a DEC priority water body. So it says, the last sentence, the village is proposing a series of remedies, including manhole relining, pipe spot repairs, pipe rehabilitation through cured in place lining. I believe I got the cost estimate here out of a grant application that we wrote for this. So if no, you know, it would be, Ben could chime in on this one, but aside from that, I don't think there's a whole lot more to say unless you folks have thoughts.
That's a good estimated cost. All the wording in there makes sense. That's definitely something that we need written into here so that we can show that it's part of our future plans for when we apply for grants and
Yes,
funding.
absolutely.
I would just add to the potential project partners list, the Western New York Stormwater Commission.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. Thank you.
And is there any discussion on this? So you have catch basins, any other kind of infiltration? Because I guess the last sentence, right now it says is existing, but the last sentence is talking mainly about dealing with the actual drainage pipes. Is there any consideration of infiltration?
I don't know. I don't know.
It might be something to, because there may be additional
I mean,
funding for things.
I think part of the infiltration problem is that the water is finding its way into old sewer lines, cracked sewer lines.
Yeah.
So when stormwater is infiltrating through soil, it's finding its way into these sewer lines. And
we're talking about that issue. Okay.
that's what the infiltration
Okay.
is.
No.
Right.
Okay. I understand. Okay.
Okay.
It's our sanitary sewers that are really getting messed up. So
So do you think that folks reading this are going to know what that is?
Yes,
Like,
absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Project 16, implement best management practices to reduce discharge of non-point source pollutants into Ellicott Creek. So Jane had a comment here. Reduce discharge of non-point source pollutants to Ellicott Creek. This project is near and dear to my heart as I am working on the Healthy Lawn Initiative as part of my role on the Erie County Environmental Management Council, and also from a community outreach perspective as part of the Master Gardeners Volunteer Program. As such, another key aspect beyond promoting healthy lawns without the use of chemicals is also the encouragement of less lawn. Lawns provide virtually little to no benefit with respect to biodiversity. Treated lawns also contribute considerable chemical pollutants into our waterways as those chemicals run off into the storm sewer systems. Therefore, we are further encouraging homeowners to convert portions of their lawns to plantings, particularly native species, which could also become part of the pollinator corridors. Can we incorporate that recommendation into this project? Absolutely. Absolutely. I like it. It's
Great idea. Yeah.
Yep. So let me make a note here to add Jane's recommendations. Okay. I have no idea what this would cost. I mean,
that seems hard because it's such a like public education project, right? And it could go in so many
Yeah.
different directions of like just a print campaign. It could be something like trying to offer people incentives, right? Like it could be so many different things.
Right.
Yeah, whether or not you're
So-
providing, materials for people.
Right.
Native plants, whether you're, providing classes.
Right.
So it could be anywhere from 15,000 to 75,000. I'm just throwing numbers out there.
Sure. I mean, it could be anything from the cost of printing and putting up a flyer to like a full staff person to implement a campaign all the time. So, I mean, that sounds like as good a range as any. To me, it's just kind of a dart at the wall with what it would cost.
Okay. All right. We'll do it that way. All right. Okay, next. Implement best management practices and other measures to reduce pesticides and fertilizers. So this was other stuff.
Yeah, I actually think Jane's may be better in this one.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think you're right. I think
What-
you're right.
What was the language of the first one? Oh, okay. The
Well,
discharge.
this one is about using green infrastructure. This is about reducing the volume of stormwater,
Yeah.
and then also the other non-point source pollutants that make their way into the water from.
So we may want to
yards
add
and
in that
streets.
one, in the non-source point pollutants, pollutants from the paved area. So that includes
Yes.
oil and,
Yeah.
vehicle discharge and other.
Yep,
pollutants.
yep.
Okay, so we want to make 16 more about pavement and 17 more about yard practices.
Yes,
That's what I would
yes.
do.
Yeah, because, yes, because that's what this is about. So, so I'm gonna take Jane's comments, and I think that is better here
Yeah, I think
Right.
that goes well.
under
with
this
that.
one. And this one, we just need to add some narrative.
I think
I
the
think
title
there's some-
goes well.
There's some opportunity to cross-reference them in each other too,
Yes.
because they're two parts of
Yep.
a similar.
Yeah.
Well, and we can certainly, and you can also certainly encourage, and we've talked, I know I've talked about this ad nauseum because it's one of my pet peeves, but the fact that, people with their yards, it's not just their lawns, they're draining directly to the creek, they're putting in the stormwater drains directly, in if they can, right? Or if they just don't ask.
Yeah.
They're paving large sections of their yards and those sorts of things. Like even on the floodplain, they'll pave, to put in pools and things like that without getting, I know some that if they ask for permits, I assume pools, usually they probably get permits, but there's lots of things people just don't ask. And so
Right.
that sort of education about alternatives, even for driveways and things like that can make some difference, right?
Yep. Okay. All right. So 17 was focused on fertilizers and lawn chemicals and that such.
Although I have to say that my neighbors asked like a good several months into doing our driveway in a permeable, and it's gravel. They kept asking me
Yeah.
when my driveway was going to be done. I'm like, it is done. Gravel.
Right. Yeah, I see that in writing these, I need to go back through each of these and clarify that this is focused more on these types of things, while this is focused primarily on the lawn products. I mean, even pet waste is that can stay there for now. All right. This
One
kind of,
thing to consider also for that is education on, and maybe this is a separate sort of thing, but education on the on gardening or dealing with, being in a floodplain. Because I think that's also another thing that causes, where people do a lot of things in their yards because they just don't know how to, put in to reduce lawn size when you're in the middle of a floodplain.
Yeah, we have a few documents that
Yeah, there's some
can
great
help.
resources.
Yeah, in there, we have a native plant guide. We have a couple booklets of, made at various times about being a creekside or streamside landowner and like how to manage your
Yeah.
streamside property.
Yeah. So those are some great resources. DC has, there's several, but I think, just kind of just adding that in there. We could offer classes, we could do all sorts of things, right? Or kind of introducing people to plants. It's the same thing as above when we were talking about, you're saying like it could be lots of different things, right? Offering plants, offering incentives, those sorts of things. But that's what I hear from people on the creek so often is they're like, well, you can't, like they'll add soil and build up their yards because they don't know what to do. The lawn doesn't work very well and they don't know what to do with it besides lawn. Right. Or that sort of thing, not realizing that there's something in between jungle and lawn.
Yeah.
All right. So a campaign like this, again, would you, there's cross-reference here.
Yeah.
Doing this, I'm just going to use the same.
I would use the same numbers.
Okay.
I'd love to see something pretty creative, here and trying to, really engage folks because there's,
I think that's the key at this point.
The folks that still have lawn there's not a lot of interest in the typical arguments.
Yeah, and I think that that's the key, like something different. Like we can make all of the booklets and resources we want, but the real work now is to actually like engage with people and figure out how to like best help them, inform, incentivize, whatever. But it's much more like people oriented.
It's something that they should care about. I think that's really the biggest thing is they don't care. But explaining to them like, flood, the best I've had is talking to people about educating them about what a floodplain is. And that impacts, whether or not they flood if their neighbor fills in their yard, right?
Yeah.
They care. It's gonna destroy their house, they care.
Okay, the next one is, again, it's public education, but it's really on proper septic system maintenance for those areas in sub-area 2 and Dream Island, where there's still septic systems going. And there's lots of materials that are available through the various sources. So this, I don't think this one is a big lift.
No.
I don't either.
I think, what did we decide? There's only about like 5 up there, or 3?
Yeah.
3,
So
I think 3.
properties because we're not using our septic anymore and are putting in a grinder pump. So.
Okay.
All right. I would add the Stormwater Coalition as a partner there again too.
Yep. All right. Okay. This one is we already talked about, this is a dam. Okay. And the dam is followed by the companion project, which was the reconstruction of the weirs that managed flow around the park. I think regardless of what's going on with the dam, I think these weirs need to be reconstructed. They may, if they were functioning properly and designed properly, they might do a better job of holding water in that area, or managing the flow better. but they're awful, especially the one up, this one here. You know, there's really not much left of it, and there's a bunch of stuff that somebody dumped in there, and so these definitely need to be renovated. So that's what this project is about. What will that cost? I have no clue. Anybody want to venture a guess?
Me.
500,000. I mean,
I was going to say $500,000.
you got to have a good geotechnical engineer in there to
No idea.
figure out,
Yeah.
but then, and materials aren't as big, but yeah, and better than,
Right.
cheaper than the dam.
Yeah, but you've got to get a contractor in there. You know,
Yeah.
it might even be more than that. I'm going to say this. All right. Maybe it's less. Okay. Establish the multi-use connection between Oak Grove Drive and Island Park. And this is, it's here, it's through, there was talk about getting a connection through the plaza, and that where you could then get into the park. This is a real, I think this is kind of a pie in the sky project, but I don't know. You know, is this a feasible project? Let me ask you folks.
Well, didn't
Can
somebody
this
talk with
ever
Ed
be achieved?
Young?
What's that?
Didn't somebody already talk to Ed Young or someone over there?
Well, I think one of the issues that Ben mentioned is that at the southwest side of the Ed Young's building, behind the dam, that piece of the parking lot may be village property. I'm not 100% sure.
It is,
Right.
Nick.
He did
Yeah,
talk
okay.
about that a little bit last time.
Right,
Yeah, it is.
right. So given that could be used for public access. However, that parking lot is so busy and so contentious due to the ownership of
busy.
the private lands.
Yeah.
It'd be a heavy lift, and I don't know how you can safely provide access from that point to that path or
So,
to Island Park.
Yeah, I know
Well,
we've had
even
extensive like
from here, how are you
discussions
going
on
to get
this
into the
one.
park?
I mean, I know that we've had extensive discussions into this one. I think I would like to see it stay. I think that from the perspective of, I think from the parking lot, you know, that's going to have to be there. You know, something that would be more along the lines of, you know, green lanes and, you know, the painted lanes and things like that. My biggest, you know, I think the reason we started talking about this is that there really is not accessible bike. You can't cross.
Yes.
You can't cross the creek.
Right, and that's a different project that was noted
Right,
as.
but this is one that would actually facilitate, because
Mm.
this is a bottleneck area. And now with the brewery there, it's even more of an issue, right? I mean, this is a real, I think this is a real need to have some way to be able to cross the creek besides just the pedestrian sidewalks.
Right,
I might add to this, I think it's a two-step process. I think it's far in the future. Number one is when we do decide on a replacement or change of venue for the dam, that you do
Yep.
consider crossing. That's step one. And step two, you know, in my opinion, you really don't end up with a good access until this entire parcel, this commercial parcel gets redone and it becomes part of the new design.
yep.
Very difficult to get a pathway through here.
Mhm,
all
I
this
agree.
traffic.
So
Yeah,
this
that makes
is all
As it-
really
as it
long
stands.
term. Yeah,
Right.
So when you say it's redone, is that because it's in the process of being, they're planning on that, or is this in one of the plans that I'm?
There's no plan that I'm
There's-
aware
there's
of,
no
but
plan.
logically speaking, it's a very valuable piece of land with a bunch of buildings that are quite honestly not that valuable. So you would think in the next, who knows how many decades, somebody's going to potentially
Redevelop it. And I think you're right.
redevelop it.
Yep.
And when you do that, if you have dealt with the crossing issue there, then you might have a chance.
Yeah.
I just don't think
that makes
it's
sense.
practical at this point with the way traffic goes through this parking lot.
No, I understand that. I mean, so, you know, this is a pathway we often go, and, you know, I lament all the time about the difficulty because going in front of the parking lot is also not very good because of the way that the shrubbery and stuff is in there. Like, it's just so
You're
dangerous.
totally,
And-
you're right. And you know, we always dreamed of,
when they redid Maine, it made it worse.
right. And we always sort of dreamed to have this crossing and then a crossing on the south side of the island as well. And I think all those things just need to be kept in mind when you're doing things like the bridge or the dam, right?
Yeah.
It's the time to do it. You know, make it so you can cross it. Let's make it 8 feet wide if you put something in there.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know what something like this would cost if it could be achieved. I mean, where you would have, whether it's a painted walkway or, you know, it's painted safety route, you know, then you'd have to get across
I
here.
think the biggest issue is the actual crossing.
Yep.
So I think it would be
Yes.
quite expensive, probably up to like, I don't know. I don't know enough about that.
Yes.
I don't know what to-
Somebody guess.
You know,
Million? I don't know.
in theory, you could do a pathway that comes from the front of the restaurant, you know, right off Main Street, going straight back, similar to what we did at the library, those drawings.
I mean,
But that doesn't get you to Oak Grove.
bridge, it's the bridge across, right? Building a bridge is expensive.
Right.
That's the only way, yeah, that's the only thing you can do though.
And again, that goes down to the dam first. What do you do with the dam first? It's already in the way.
Yes, right. Yep.
Because I think when we originally talked about this, we talked about it as being, you know, kind of connected. So connected to the dam with the idea of, okay, if you did, right? And that's listed here. You did note that.
Yes.
So if it's assumed that cost for the actual bridge is covered under the reconstruction of the dam, then it's probably not terribly expensive, right?
Right. But,
Because
you know,
rest
if
of
the
it,
dam,
point, you know, best case scenario, we're talking, you know, painting and things like that, because there's no leeway behind
And-
these buildings.
if they do the hydrologic study and it's determined that the dam is not going to be rebuilt here, that they have other solutions, and then there's no dam here, then do we just build a pedestrian bridge? You know, what happens there? So that's, you know,
Yeah, it's way in the future.
yeah,
Yeah, because remember, bridges are dams by
Right.
definition, right? So
yep.
that means, I mean, you got to get Army Corps sign off and all of that too.
Okay, all right. The next one is, this is a project we'll talk with the town of Amherst about. This is mitigating the low water flow problems in the Len Springs area. And so I'm not, I don't know. I mean, they need to look at the drainage flow. It was noted that it may have been changed when they reconstructed Worley Drive. So the project requires looking at the problem and identifying appropriate mitigation measures so that you can restore the natural water flow back to the creek. I don't know what that would be, maybe 50,000 to 150,000. I don't know.
Yeah, at least.
Wait,
Well, you'd have to study it and figure out what's going on.
I think that would be a lot more expensive than.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I mean, you're messing with that. We get nasty letters from the Lens Springs sometimes, and people, you know, if we get a tree caught up on the bridge and they're worried about it. So
Okay,
I mean, it's a problem, right? And I just don't know.
it's a problem.
That seems like that would be actually quite a large project.
Larger than that, more money? Give me a number.
Wow.
500 to $1 million? I don't know.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I guess I have no idea what whenever you're talking about restoring water flow and dealing with flow, it's not an
Yeah.
easy,
Yeah, okay.
a quick fix, right? I mean, that's a big
Sure.
fix. Yeah.
Okay,
If you want to call it a fix, right? And then whatever we do with the dam is going to make it.
that's gonna play into it as well. Yep. And now we have this one. This is a tough project because this is private. You know, this is the wall. And the wall is, there's parts of it that are not in good shape. It's old, it's really old.
Right.
This wall was built when you had mills up here. And it's incredible that it's lasted this long. So I think that that's a testimony to how well it was constructed, but it's seen better days and it needs to be fixed. Right here, this is a grist wheel from the
Right.
mill
Mill.
that used to sit up here.
Mhm.
And that needs to be removed and
Filled in.
probably taken to the historical society or put somewhere in town, maybe in Glen Park, as a testament to the milling activity that used to happen around there. But this needs to be fixed. The problem is that it's all private property and it's really not the village's responsibility to do it.
And they're
Right.
not going to do it because I can tell you how incredibly expensive it is to deal with the
It's
stone.
ridiculous. I'm sure it's ridiculously expensive to try to get in here and do all that.
No, it's very expensive. You basically have to hand undo it and hand redo it. And it's really, for a lot of it, right? This
Yes.
isn't something you can just slap down if you're going to actually rebuild it in the historic means. I think
Right.
from the village perspective, they have to you basically decide. I don't think that these walls are not actually, they're not actually in the historic registry, right? For Williamsville.
No,
I'm not sure. They're not.
I
No,
don't
because
think
they're all individually owned. That's the problem, you know?
Right.
Go with
Yeah,
the
no,
property.
that they have, right? So if they're
Right.
not, then you know, I mean, if the village wants to protect them as a historic thing, then you're gonna have to have that fight. But good luck, right? I mean, I think that's gonna be difficult, just given, you know, and the homeowners just aren't gonna do it, right? I
well,
don't.
let me ask you this. I mean, should we even include this in this document? Do we want this in here? I mean, is it important to at least highlight that it's a problem?
I think it is important.
Yeah, I
Definitely.
agree.
I
I think
agree.
we should.
But I just don't have a solution.
No, we
Right.
don't, but it should be mentioned. If there's any excess money, we could use it. But yeah, it's gotta be put in the plan. Absolutely.
I agree.
So, you think $3 to $5 million? More?
Yeah.
5 to 10.
Okay,
Yeah,
There's a lot of wall out there.
yeah,
Yes.
I agree. It's gonna be really expensive.
okay. All right. Okay, here you go, Cheryl. Provide opportunities for bike lanes and widen roadway shoulders in the waterfront area. And this just talks about the fact that, you know, you need to have these amenities to safely accommodate bicyclists, and that there are locations where designated bike lanes and improved roadway shoulders could provide safer means of travel, including Glen Avenue, Mill Street, Oak Grove, just as examples.
And And also, let's also make sure that we add, especially kind of given the fact that it seems like, any crossing would be so far in the future there, just, looking at safety of crossing the creek. I know that's mentioned in the background section, but it's worth making sure that we
So
have it
you
here.
want that mentioned in here? I mean, this was,
Yeah,
specific-
well, yeah,
not-
because, these are, at least, saying, improving safer mean for travel and residents, visitors to the area, including, current, addressing current, hazards. Like, the lack of adequate, crossing, creek crossings.
okay. Done. Okay. And I don't know what this, some of this is just a matter of striping shoulders or creating wider shoulders.
I think I think a great way to think about it is thinking about it like a bike boulevard sort of thing. Did we put in that in a separate section? Because that's
No.
what we had talked about. So bike boulevard is using the existing streets, but it's, signage, sometimes bollards that basically, decrease the desirability for streets to be used by cars. They still can be, but sometimes it's, makes them less convenient to use. And, basically provides a route. And, they've done bike boulevards. I believe didn't they put one in Buffalo somewhere? I feel like they use that terminology.
I can't think of exactly where. I know Go Bike uses that terminology a lot. There are some places where there's like travel two ways for bikes, and they've like changed the way that cars flow. But yeah, in short, yes, like that language is definitely used in the region.
Maggie, I know when you talk with Amherst, I think that they're thinking about that. So
Yeah,
Okay.
they definitely
I know
are.
Maggie she's a bike commuter, so I know she had been thinking about that.
Okay. Alrighty. Okay, and I have no clue what this kind of thing would cost, but it's probably about, I would say several $100,000 if
Yeah,
not-
probably. I mean, I don't think it's going to be huge expense, but
No, Wendy, I'd say from 100 to 300,000.
100 to 300? I think it's more than that.
Do you think? Okay.
I think when you start to factor in all the time that goes
Yep.
in with dealing with the department, like the New York State departments, that really bumps up the cost. Like that was a little bit flippant, but also kind of true.
I'm sure it is. I didn't even think about that.
I think this is realistic. If we're looking at more than one street and trying to make this connected corridor, I think there's more to it. So, okay.
Yeah, we should definitely talk though with Amherst and talk about,
Yes.
traveling through the area, but, connecting to, if they're doing something, connecting to that, because that would be quite a nice regional.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. All right, now these last couple projects are just some miscellaneous stuff that was mentioned. So the first one is installing historic interpretation signage in appropriate locations. So, noting that Ellicott Creek and Glen Falls were the source of water supply that powered historic mills. The whole history of milling activities is long and of interest to the public. And so when you go into Glen Park, you can look up and see the remnants of the beautiful mill, but there's nothing in the park that gives you any indication of the history of that area. And I personally think it's a fascinating history. And so having some interpretive signage and kiosks or whatever, I mean, they created that lovely little sitting area up at the top of, near Main Street at the top of Glen Park. You could add something there. You could have signage down below the mill that tells you this is what you're looking at and why it was important, that type of stuff. So I can't imagine any of you disagree.
No, I mean, I think there is something about the mill, isn't there, up by on Spring Street? But I agree. I mean, just leave it in, but like, because I think that there's much more that could be discussed.
Yeah. And then I'm guessing this would cost maybe $50,000. I don't know.
I have no idea how much signs cost.
Okay.
It's a lot, but go for it.
Yeah, okay. And then this is just a general one, supporting more commercial activities on Main and Spring Streets. This is really, sort of pushing at the economic piece, working with the business association. So I don't know what that would involve, promoting additional businesses. I mean, working with I don't know. I mean, an educational campaign. I have no idea, because this is not my bailiwick. Economic development is not.
Well, I mean, the things, I don't know how much of these would go in there, but I think the things that we see that have drawn people in, are really around the concerts in Island Park, the Thursday night live music at the restaurants. I mean, that gets a lot of things going on in normal times.
Yeah, I mean, I think for this to be like part of an LWRP, you have to connect it back to the water, not necessarily water dependent uses, but like the way in which that the water is drawing people to these places, and how, projects for, revitalizing the creek in the area are related, like that downtown revitalization is like related directly to the water.
So not just the land that's in there?
Well, the land that's in there too, but the point being that
park usage,
the economic development comes from people being attracted by the fact that there is a creek there. So like connecting it to the water is an important part of why people are coming there.
Well, I mean, the general gestalt of the area, right? I mean, it's the water, it's I don't know if that counts, but to me, it seems like it's kind of part of that.
No, I think everything you said is right on. So, okay, I'll build that in. How you do that? I mean, it's got to be just.
Well, the village is
know.
doing it, like the business associations in the village has. I don't know exactly who does these things, and there's others on this call that knows better. But I know, I mean, this isn't just a business doing it.
Yeah, I guess my problem here is I don't know what the actual project is. Is the project working with realtors to attract businesses? Is the project putting together
building
promotional materials
building community events and other, really around like events and not traditions. I'm not thinking of the right words right now, but that sort of thing that are, like the concerts in Island Park that attract people to
Cultural events.
There you go.
Right.
And then I think like marketing and promotion is a part of that too, like tie in with promotion of cultural events and, promoting the downtown business district.
Right. There you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Williamsville Main Street, right? Like lots of towns and villages have like their Main Street program where they brand and like have communications consistently around like shopping local and going to Main Street and all of that.
So would it be more about maybe developing a marketing strategy that would tie? I mean, I've got here tie in with promotion of local cultural events and parks, promoting downtown businesses, and emphasize how the creek and the falls are an attraction that brings visitors to the area and how businesses can benefit from that. In my mind, what we're saying is we need a marketing strategy to do those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But yeah, I want to make sure that we retain the historic value of the village too. Can
Well,
we
that would
somehow-
all be part of it, yeah.
Yeah, but that's
And
important.
and that's controlled by other regulations that you have, your historic preservation regulations that, and your architectural review that dictates how, if a building's going to be reused, how the historic features have to be
Right.
retained,
It's
things like that.
Exactly.
So but this is economic development. But I
Yeah.
think to do this, they have to have a marketing strategy or an improved marketing strategy that takes advantage of these things and ties it all together.
Highlights the historic value, highlights the water attractions, highlights the cultural life.
The nature that's there. I mean, that I think is really something that is, very unique about Williamsville versus all the other, many of the other, is that we do have, villages and stuff that we do have nature basically incorporated into.
Which is, yeah, a lot of nature paths, a lot, which is wonderful. Like the Lehigh Valley and all that, they're all one big corridor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so if marketing includes sort of the sort of events, whatever, and like I said, I don't know who does those, but
I mean, we're talking about, well, we need to promote this and we need to emphasize this. You have to have a strategy to do that.
yeah, no, I understand. I understand what you're saying.
They need to have some kind of strategy that captures all of that and sells it.
Yeah.
So, okay. The last one, well, I don't remember who brought this up, but it was, evaluate the installation of lighting to illuminate Glen Falls.
Yeah, because the private owners do that now. I don't know if you ever noticed, sometimes it's lit,
Right.
and sometimes it's not. And it's a private homeowners who do that. And you know what? It is really nice when they do that, I'll be honest. Can it be done on certain holidays, events? Would I want it all the time? No. I don't know, what do you guys think?
Well, yeah, I mean, somebody would have to control it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a computer can control it for, I mean,
All right, but you think it's a
1910 dam, you can.
this is a
Who
good
knows?
project?
I don't know. I don't
I
know.
mean, and that's the other thing, it's like, well, when do they go on and when do they go off?
Yeah, I don't
Right.
know if I'm too keen on this, really. I don't know.
I thought that we had talked about taking this out because it isn't technically the park closed after sundown anyway.
Yeah, it becomes very
Right.
commercial. Yeah, you're right. I
Closes
don't,
at
yeah,
dusk. Yep,
Yeah.
okay.
I don't like it. I agree.
Okay. All right, and then. just-
Promote dark sky.
Yeah. right.
True. Yeah, it's so important.
I mean, you could do it dark sky compliant, technically, depending on how you actually lit them, but I doubt they would.
I'm with Eileen, I never thought this was a great idea, but it's not up to me, so. I just noted other things, I would get rid of the tree maintenance in parks because you have a tree law and that takes care of that. So that's out. Structures that warrant historic designation, that unless you guys can think of any right off, it's really the job of the Historic Preservation Board
Right.
to do that. So that's out. And then creek maintenance at the falls. I guess that idea is there debris or stuff down
So
here?
there are two sections of that wall. Is that what?
No, I think this was related to debris and stuff that was down in this area below the falls.
Down, sorry, when you
Or
say
I
this
don't know, or
area.
trees.
Oh, below the falls. Oh, yeah, because it gets the debris and
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah, it does. Keaton, does Ben pull that out if it gets to be too cumbersome? Do you know?
I think below they leave it, don't they?
All right, what was that? What was the question? Does Ben pull?
Does Ben go down there sometimes, the DPW, and pull out excessive debris at the bottom of the falls? Does that ever happen?
Yeah, there's been times we've had shopping carts, cones.
Oh, see, there you go.
traffic cones down there.
Yeah, garbage, but I think you guys
Yeah.
leave logs
So-
and things like that, right?
We leave that for the ducks, right?
Yeah,
Whoever
Right.
swims
exactly.
there,
You know,
right?
stuff that honestly shouldn't be there, they get out. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I guess the
okay.
question is there a project here? And if it's just that this is something that DPW does on a
I
regular
mean,
or as
yeah,
needed.
it's on their list of things to do generally. It's not, you know, I mean, if there's a cone in the
Yeah.
creek and it's kind of, it's not gonna go anywhere and there's other things to do, it won't be high on a priority list, you know, but it will get done by them. So,
Okay.
I think that's more of a Glen Park joint board
Yeah, yeah,
discussion and maintenance of the park.
yeah, that's a good point.
All right, that's fine.
Okay, so we've completed our review of this section. So I'm gonna go back and work on it, make the changes. I'll keep everything highlighted in yellow that's new and let you guys take one more pass at it before we finalize it, and then I'll send it off to the Department of State. But
So regarding the lighting, is
Yes.
there any lighting in any of the parks?
yes,
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, one thing to consider is to consider, as long as we're just putting wish lists out, is to consider, you know, transition to dark sky lighting in public parks.
Well, right now, we're actually changing everything over to LED lights. I don't know if you knew that, like Glen
Yeah,
Park.
but that's
Yeah.
fine, right? So, and,
yes,
you know, but I mean, if we're getting additional funding from an environmental perspective, the dark sky lighting, you know, it can be done with any, that's all just about the shielding, right?
yeah. the dark
Because
sky light-
that's
It's about the
important
type
for
of
some birds.
lighting fixtures that you use. If you use something that has a hood over it, or it could be more decorative, that sort of like maybe has a Chinese hat over the top of it. You have to have the flat lenses so that the light itself isn't extending down so that the glare goes out in all directions.
Yeah,
But there's
and you
a
can still do it
number
so it's
of
well-
lighting
So it's
fixtures.
still well
that you
lit. It's
can
just
find.
that it doesn't cause the light pollution that is, you know, bad for, because the reason I'm thinking about is, you know, we have along the creek, you know, big firefly populations and they're beautiful to see, and things like the lights and stuff really mess up.
So do you want this rewritten as utilize?
That's
or
what made me think
install-
about it.
Install dark sky compliant lighting in public parks?
Yeah, I mean, that's what made me think about it. And I think that could be something that's, you know, I can't imagine it's going to be something that people are going to put as a high priority, but
Yeah.
I think it would be nice, particularly around, you know, some of the, you know, disappearing, you know, populations of fireflies and things like that, I mean, it is like a fireworks show on the creek around 4th of July. It's beautiful.
I think it's good to have that in there. And I will say that I believe, and I'd have to go look, but I think all the documents that I've seen over the last 10 years, you know, the community plan, the parks plan. I know I've heard lots of discussions on that type of lighting. So
Okay, good.
that's a good thing, but it doesn't hurt to have that in here.
Okay, I'll rewrite this. Okay. Okay, great. So that is it for section 4. So I'm gonna stop sharing this document and share with you then this one. This is the next section, and I have put this together in very preliminary draft form. And what I'd like to do, I don't want to go a whole lot past 8:30 because that'll put us at 2 hours, and I don't like meetings to go a whole lot longer than that. So let me just walk you through this to familiarize you with what goes in section 5 and the places in this section of the LWRP that we need to focus on and I need your help with. So the upfront part, the whole idea is how section 4 looks at projects and land uses and that type of stuff to help implement the policies and recommendations of the LWRP. Section 5 focuses on the legislative piece and the regulatory part of it. So the first thing is to outline all the existing laws that you have on the books that could help implement the LWRP policies. So I went through the village code and I pulled out what I thought were the relevant chapters of the code. So I have the brush, grass and weeds law, which it regulates how high grass can be on private properties, and then also parts of the public right of way. Also the elimination of nasty plants. Not sure how you enforce that, but it's in the law. Then the buildings unsafe and unfinished for public health and safety. Then of course the flood damage prevention law. You have the garbage, rubbish and refuge law, the historic preservation law. Then there's chapter 70, and this doesn't have to be highlighted anymore, which is your parks and public areas law. Then there's the property maintenance law, recycling, sewer use, signs, streets and sidewalks, trees, water for public water, and then zoning. And the big piece that comes out of zoning are the stormwater management regulations. So those are the laws that you have on the books now. The one law that I know you have to adopt, because this would be about any proposed laws necessary. So are there laws that we should adopt? Are there laws that should be amended? And the only thing that I could identify at this time is the fact that you're going to have to adopt a consistency review law. You have to have a structure for how actions will be reviewed to make sure that they're consistent with the LWRP policies. I thought about the that proposed law that Matt Ichu told me about for the urban open space, but the village has the RFP out right now for a comprehensive plan update, and that's a part of that. So
That's right.
that should stay there. So I did not bring it into the LWRP.
Okay.
When that law is finalized and adopted, then the parks in the waterfront revitalization area would be rezoned under that classification. So, all right. So that's what this upfront part is. It's what laws you have now, what laws you need. I couldn't see any issues in any of these existing laws where I felt that you needed to upgrade anything or amend anything. So I think the laws you have now are good. So then this was the next piece here is other public and private actions necessary to implement the LWRP. So this is stuff that would be done by other entities, whether they're the county or other regional organizations or the town of Amherst or state agencies or federal agencies. And so I want you to read through this list. I tried to highlight some of the things that I thought, like Erie County Health, Erie County DEP, Erie County Soil and Water Conservation Service, the town of Amherst, the town's Water Pollution Control Center, the Greater Buffalo Niagara Regional Transportation Council, and the Waterkeeper. Then looking at state agencies, the DEC, the Environmental Facilities Corporation, NYSERDA, the Department of State, Department of Transportation, and Office of, this would be the State Parks, and then the Department of Economic Development, Empire State Development Corporation. I'm just looking back here at DOT and actually county. I want to take a closer look at this in terms of county highway and DOT for the bike boulevard thing. The jurisdiction of are Oak Grove or Mill or Glen Avenue, are those village roads? Are they town? Are they county? Does anybody know?
Part of Mill is town.
Mill
The
is
rest
town.
of Mill from basically right near Amherst State Park's main entrance all the
Yeah.
way up is village. And then you asked about Oak Grove, that's village. Was
Okay.
there another one too?
Glen Avenue.
Yeah,
That's village.
that's
Okay.
village.
All right. All right, never mind then. Okay, so if you go through that list, think about this list in relation to those projects that we just talked about, and let me know if you think I missed anything where somebody could help with something. Because the idea is, how can other agencies or entities help the village implement the LWRP, whether it's through technical assistance, whether it's through funding, whether it's coming in and actually doing capital projects on their own, that type of thing. And then these were federal programs. That would be the Army Corps of Engineers, the Federal Highway Administration, Small Business Administration, FEMA, and then the U.S. Department of Fish and Wildlife Service. Then the next piece here is other public and private actions necessary to implement the LWRP. This is where we need to talk about the internal structure for how actions that are proposed within the waterfront area are reviewed for consistency. Because in addition to adopting that consistency review law, the village also has to adopt or start utilizing a waterfront assessment form. So now when anybody comes in and they propose to do something, whether it's a private entity or it's a state or county or federal agency, they have to fill out a waterfront assessment form and answer questions that indicate whether their project is consistent with the LWRP policies.
Mhm.
Somebody
good.
in the village has to review that and sign off on it and make a consistency review decision. And so I started trying to figure out how I thought that might be done, looking at the way that the village does stuff now. And I saw that right now, if somebody wants to undertake some kind of a development action, they start at the building department.
Right.
And they would process it with the building and zoning clerk, and then that it gets funneled from there to the appropriate entity, whether that's the planning board or whether that's the historic preservation board, DBA, or what have the architectural review board, whatever. It gets sent from there. So in my mind, then it would make sense that waterfront assessment forms are provided with application packets for properties that are in the waterfront area, and that when those applications are processed, that's going to start at the building department. And then
I agree.
and then if there are any actions that are more complicated, then the planning board could get brought in to into the effort. But for the most part, the building department would be making the simpler consistency review decisions. So I first looked at what are the entities in the village that would be involved with the local management and coordination of the LWRP. So the village board will prioritize and advance LWRP projects and direct the appropriate village agency or a grant writing consultant to prepare applications for funding from various agencies to finance LWRP projects. The village also has the authority to make zoning amendments necessary to implement the LWRP. Then you have the Planning and Architectural Review Board. The Village Planning Board has site plan and architectural review and approval authority for any project located in the waterfront area that requires such approval, and issues recommendations for subdivision of 4 or more lots, for zoning, rezoning, that should say, for rezoning requests, and actions involving changes to the comprehensive plan, zoning districts, and zoning map as referred by the village board. And then I added that the planning board will also be responsible for the overall management and coordination of the LWRP. And this is where I need somebody to chime in. Is this correct? I mean, because somebody's got to take ownership for the document. So in other words, if it were the planning board, the board in consultation with the building department as required will inform the village board of trustees on implementation priorities, work assignments, timetables, budgets. So this, what I'm saying right here goes back to, I don't know if it was Nick or Noel who asked the question, are we prioritizing these projects? Well, they would prioritize. So here I'm saying it would be the planning board that would be that entity. They would be the ones who are taking ownership of the LWRP in terms of saying each year we recommend that the village board undertake these projects or seek funding for this or whatever to make sure that the LWRP is being actively implemented. Does that make sense? Or should it be some other entity? Should it be the village board?
It should be the village board because they're see, the planning board just kind of sits and waits for plans.
Okay,
They don't really do the planning per se.
okay,
So it should be the village board that leads planning.
okay,
And I didn't get to see all the way down, but you know, our three land use boards are the planning board, the zoning board, and historic preservation.
Yeah.
So they should also work in concert together to try to review any plans that come before the board or any plans that the board sets in motion
right.
regarding the LWRP.
Okay, so you said, all right. So, okay. So you said the planning board, was it the zoning board?
Planning and zoning.
And then the
And-
historic preservation.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay,
Maybe.
I gotta add that, all right. Whoops. No. Okay. All right, so I'll restructure this. Okay, so let me just, so it'll be the village board that will take ownership of the LWRP then and do these things. And all right, so I'll fix that. All right, and then the planning board has then again, site plan and architectural review authority for projects located in the WRA that require such approval and issues recommendations for the subdivision of 4 or more lots, rezoning requests or actions involving the comprehensive plan zoning districts. So say what you said again, the planning board would also review, implement, what do they do at the village board's recommendations?
The planning board would review potential site plans and potential projects
For LWRP implementation?
for LWRP, yeah. As would, you know, zoning if it were a zoning issue.
Okay,
I guess, I don't know, I don't know how to suggest wording it, you know, I mean, those are our 3 land use
yeah,
boards,
no, that's good.
So-
Okay,
you know.
okay, and then I'll move the code enforcement officer, but let me jump down here then. So the zoning board of appeals, they would make consistency determinations for variances and site plan applications. They'll be responsible for making recommendations. Oh, no, the code enforcement office will be responsible for making recommendations to the ZBA after their review of consistency review documentation for completeness. I'm confusing myself here.
Yeah, it's confusing.
Yeah. All right, so anyway, I have to add language about the Historic Preservation Board, but then also I set this up to say The building department will be the designated village agency to receive and process consistency review requests and documentation. The building and zoning clerk will distribute copies of the waterfront assessment form as necessary to applicants proposing to undertake certain actions within the WRA.
Mhm.
As part of the consistency review and approval process, in accordance with the adopted LWRP consistency review law, the building and zoning clerk will forward all waterfront assessment forms that are received with development applications, including building permits, to the code enforcement officer.
Officer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or their designee, because I don't know if it would be the code enforcement officer himself, or if he'll designate somebody.
No, it's usually himself.
Okay, so I don't have to say or his designee? So
No, isn't that correct, Keaton? It's usually just the code enforcement officer.
I mean, there's
Because
three people in the building department, so.
Right, okay. I mean, it's not like you're gonna have
Sometimes,
tons of these.
sometimes Tony works as code enforcement officer
Right.
too. I
Yeah,
would
Oh,
leave
he
that
does?
in there.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
right.
I think I feel better leaving it just in
Okay.
case, you know? I mean, it's not like you're
That's
gonna
fine.
have a high volume of
right.
consistency review requests coming in, but
Yeah.
still, I don't know how busy your code enforcement officer is. So in case he feels that he needs to designate it to someone else. So the code enforcement officer or their designee who will be responsible for reviewing the completeness of the applications for village agency actions proposed within the WRA and for making recommendations to the appropriate village agencies for the consistency of actions with the LWRP policies, projects, and purposes. So the code enforcement officer or their designee, at their discretion, will refer consistency determination requests for actions other than site plan approval to the planning board for the review and consultation on project or permit applications proposed within the WA that require more extensive review. So if it's something that isn't a site plan action, which means it would already be before the planning board, but it's an action that needs, that the code enforcement officer might feel they need assistance with, they can reach out to the planning board and get their recommendation and opinions. So the code enforcement officer will also coordinate with the New York State Department of State and other state agencies and/or federal agencies regarding their respective consistency review of actions proposed within the WRA. So if other agencies are proposing actions, the code enforcement office would also handle that. And then something's wrong with what I wrote about the ZBA, but I'll fix that. And then finally, the village clerk will maintain and make available to the public copy of the LWRP for use during normal business hours. And then working with the code enforcement office will, wait a minute, that's something's wrong there. With that. Also, documentation generated for consistency review decisions by village boards and agencies will be kept on file with the village clerk along with other appropriate approval documentation. Because I'm assuming the village clerk is the repository for that stuff, or is it the building department? When an approval is made, when a site plan is approved, where's the file kept?
Building
Judy?
department,
There you
building
go.
department.
Okay, all right, I will fix that then. Okay. Okay. All right, the rest of all of this is just boilerplate stuff that the Department of State puts in.
Mhm.
What that is it's just, this is the guidelines. This is if state agency actions are being proposed in the LWRP or the waterfront revitalization area. If the state wants to come in and do something, this is the procedure that has to be followed for how they do that and how they would interact with the code enforcement officer. All right. And then this next piece is the same thing, but for federal actions. If a federal action is proposed, same thing, all the procedures that would be followed and what would happen and how they would interact with the code enforcement office. And this procedure, this process includes if a federal or state agency comes in and they want to do something and the village doesn't feel that it's consistent with the LWRP, you can indicate so. So here, after the notification, the code enforcement officer or their designee will submit the village's written comments and recommendations on the proposed federal activity to the DOS before. So what happens is if the village doesn't agree, then you bring the DOS in and they act as a intermediary to address any objections and to help try to reach some level of concurrence on a project. And you can say, if you don't think a project is consistent with your LWRP, that you want it modified in some way. So you have that authority. That's actually one of the benefits of having a local program, is that it gives you now that authority, because at present that authority rests with the state. That's why a lot of communities, especially the communities along the lakes and other open waters, want to do LWRPs, because they don't want the state making all these decisions for them. They want to make the decisions themselves on certain things. So that's what the rest of this is. So, and then finally, the last piece is financial resources necessary to implement the LWRP. And this was the list of all the potential funding sources. I had originally had this at the end of section 4, but it actually goes here. So these are all the various grant programs and things where the village could potentially seek funding to undertake the projects that we talked about earlier. So I hope I haven't confused you with all of this. I'm gonna rework this based on what we talked about, and I'll put another revised copy of this in the Dropbox for you. And I'd like everybody to take time to look at it before our next meeting so that we can finalize it. But I think I've given you the gist of it. So do you have any questions? Okay,
Great work, Wendy.
thanks.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, but
Very
we're
nice,
getting
thank
there.
you.
I mean, these are the last really big sections.
Yay.
And so what we need to talk about next time is our next public outreach effort. After we get that list of projects finalized and we have some ideas, we aren't going to have any zoning changes or anything, but we do want to vet that project list, and we do want to get public input on that and where we are, and then we can start pulling the draft together. And there's one more small section. There's two more sections after section 5. There's one section that's all complete boilerplate that the Department of State gives us. It's state and federal actions. Oh, I forgot what it's called, but it's just a complete listing of all the possible state agencies and all the possible federal agencies that might help the village implement the LWRP. And they will just give me that piece and I will just insert it. But then the last section is section 7, and that's local commitment and consultation. And that's where we'll, it's a real short section. I already started putting it together. That just outlines what we did to get public input. So it'll talk about the public information meeting that we had and the fact that this committee has been set up and the representation on the committee. And then whatever we do next, which will probably be another public meeting in a charrette fashion, hopefully we'll be able to come together in another couple months. Maybe not, I don't know. We have to figure out how we may want to approach it. And then that's it. Then we'll pull the draft together. So I'm trying to stay. I had given you guys a revised schedule, so I'm trying to stay with that schedule. And so, especially because we lost so much time
Right.
last year, so trying to make that up.
Yes.
So that's it. So I will get you a revised section 4 with all the changes we made to the projects highlighted, so you can give that a final look. Then I'll give you another draft of section 5. You can look at that, and that's what we'll talk about next time, and also about public outreach. So we're getting there.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
And then Keaton and I are
Definitely.
going to go and see the village, or I'm sorry, the town.
Town.
And now I have several projects. I thought there would only be 2, but now I've got a good half a dozen or so. So
Absolutely.
yes, we'll have a good conversation with them.
Yeah.
So that's it.
So I was looking ahead at March. Does everybody want to meet like on Tuesday, March 16th? Does that work for anybody?
Either the 16th or the 23rd, either one is good for me.
Okay. 23rd is a pretty heavy night. As far as village meetings, there's a HPC meeting.
Okay, the 16th is okay.
16th, the 18th is also open. That's Thursday.
That works too for me.
Okay. How about everybody else? Thursday, the 18th?
Yeah, I prefer the
Yeah, I'm
18th.
available either the 18th or the 16th, Keaton.
Wonderful. All right.
Well,
No?
actually,
That's
I
fine
can't
with
do the
me.
23rd either. I was looking at something else.
Oh, okay.
I have a meeting that night. All right, the 18th is good.
Okay, perfect. I'll send out the email in the morning.
All right, sounds good. 6:30. And we'll Zoom it again. So
Okay,
that sounds good.
perfect.
All right, thanks everybody.
Have a
Thank
great evening.
you. Appreciate
Stay
it.
well.
Thank you, Wendy.
Good
I'll talk to you
night.
soon.